People who are new, they struggle with like, okay, who's the first person that I should hire?
Mhm.
And in this business, I believe it's exactly who you hired. It's someone who's going to take off the non-revenue generating tasks because
Good point.
scrubbing a list, right, or doing due diligence on a property, like seeing if it has, electric, that time that you spend there, that literally does not make you money. What
Right.
makes you money is talking to sellers and getting deals. So
Mhm.
that's the highest revenue producing task that you could do.
All right, welcome to this episode of the Land Flipping Podcast. We're going to be talking to Aurelio. Now, Aurelio is a great land investor. We're going to talk about how he got started and in only his first 3 months was able to add over $100,000 in pipeline profit. We're going to talk about how he got started, how he's closing his deals, what that entire process looks like, how he's scaling his land flipping business, hiring virtual assistants, and the future and where he's looking to go and eventually hit $100,000 a month. So this is a really action-packed episode. We cover everything from starting to closing deals to scaling and everything that you need to know to actually get your land flipping business started. So you're gonna wanna make sure you watch this thing all the way through because there's some amazing information in this podcast. Let's dive in.
All right, man. Well, look, obviously I know you. Everyone else doesn't yet.
Yep.
So tell me who you are, a little bit about your background, and we can crack into this thing.
Yeah. So my name is Aurelio Licata. Been a serial entrepreneur for the past three and a half years about. Started my first business when I was a junior in college.
Okay.
Just kind of escalated from there. Wanted to really dive deeper into my entrepreneurial journey.
Okay.
And then recently came across flipping vacant land
Okay.
and started that about 3.5 months ago
Nice.
around. And decided to kind of go all in on that business while continuing my journey and venturing in the other aspects of my entrepreneurial journey.
Okay.
And everything's been going well, extremely well, and just been wanting to grind that out and take it as far as I can. But everything's been really good, and just trying to hammer it down. That's all.
Nice. Okay. Well, tell me this. So where were you a few months prior to land before you actually got started with it?
Yeah, so I was in a pretty good position in my life.
Okay.
Definitely always looking to do better,
Yeah.
but financially in a somewhat comfortable position. Just getting ready to move out of my house, start building a little bit more of a life that I wanted in the future.
Mm.
So everything was pretty good. I was really just looking for another business or company to build where I
Okay.
can kind of get back in the trenches again and kind of
Okay.
work from the ground up and just I think that's where I kind of thrive,
Mm.
as far as like building the businesses rather than kind of just sitting it out and just once you kind of build something and just letting it kind of coast. I
Yeah.
kind of wanted to get back into the trenches, like I said, and start building something bigger, I guess.
Okay.
And I think that's was the turning point of why I wanted to jump into flipping vacant land is because that's how I thrive. Like I like building
Yeah.
stuff the bottom up,
Yeah.
and this just fit all my skills that I previously had, and then there was also other areas of this business that I haven't developed yet as
Okay.
far as skill sets, and I thought, hey, this would be a perfect opportunity to
Mm.
get into it, so kind of just dove in head first.
It's funny you say that. I'm the same exact way, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs are where like their core skill set is like starting something, and
Right.
that's what they enjoy, right? Because it's like it's new and like you get this thing like that you haven't done before. So I'm kind of curious because obviously when you're looking to start something new, and you know this, like there's a million things that you can do,
Right.
right? So why did you pick land compared to anything else you could have done?
Mhm. Um, well, I think the first thing I should mention is like I always had an interest in real estate, right? So
Okay.
when I went to college, I mean, I just did marketing.
Okay.
That was my degree, but I always had an interest in real estate. When I was super young, I wanted to be like the only thing I knew of when I thought of real estate when I was in high school or my early stages in college was a landlord, right? That's like
Okay.
the basic thing that everyone knows when someone says real estate.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my dream of like, hey, let me just own a bunch of houses, create
Mm.
passive income, and just be like the top dog, quote unquote landlord,
Yeah.
and just control everything, right? And then the more I started to dig into real estate, I started to find that there were so many different sectors
Yeah.
that you can get into, not necessarily being a landlord and having all of these, I guess, moving parts. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So that's really what brought me into my previous business, which I started doing Airbnb, right?
Yep.
And it's been close to 3.5 years already. And then that's when I really expanded my mind and was like, wow, I'm in
Mm.
real estate, right? And it's when I started like telling people, right, everyone close family members started asking me, hey, what are you doing?
Hmm.
And I was just telling them real estate, marketing, blah, blah, blah. And the more that started happening, I started realizing that the amount of people that say they do real estate, but they aren't landlords, like it just made me expand my mind of how many different areas that you can get into in real
Yeah,
estate without having being that like landlord type of position.
sure.
So that's really why I wanted to jump into land, is because it's a whole nother sector of real estate that it's not as popular, right?
Okay.
Not as known.
Mm.
So that's kind of what driven me or drove me into that.
Nice. That's interesting. Yeah, and obviously, I mean, you know as well as I do, like Airbnb, it's a great way to make money. It is a lot more competitive
Mhm.
than I would say the land space is,
Right.
currently.
Mhm.
So when you were kind of evaluating like the next step, the next real estate opportunity you were going to get into, what were some of the, I guess, criteria that that next opportunity needed to have where you were going to feel like, okay, that's what I want to do?
Hmm. I think a good answer to that would be just maybe a little bit bigger ROI,
Okay.
right? So I think for our Airbnb, like, and I still do Airbnb to this day, obviously, and I've been coaching on it, and I think it's a
Yep.
phenomenal business model. What I like to tell everyone about it, specifically with Airbnb, is it's such a good business model to get into with low capital, right?
100%.
Obviously, leveraging the business 0% interest bank, business
Yep.
cards, etc., and things of that sort. But I really wanted to get into another business that was going to bring me a little bit bigger ROI, right?
Okay.
I took the Airbnb business to a pretty scalable size
Yeah.
where I was living a decent life and feeling comfortable, allowing me to have time and location freedom,
Okay.
and kind of work on something what I really, or find something that what I really wanted to work on.
Yes.
Um, so I wanted to find something that I could maybe use that profits from my other business and kind of rotate into another business to
Mm.
give me a little bit more ROI, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so for you specifically, when you think about that ROI, like what is that kind of monthly revenue number that you want to be able to hit?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall in general, like the whole goal is like 100,000 a month.
Okay.
Not necessarily meaning from one business, but
Sure.
in total.
Okay.
I think that's like the overall goal, and I'm sure it'll definitely increase that like once I hit it, but
Yeah.
because it always does, of course. But like, I think just mainly having land as like the big chunk of that $100,000 per month, and then
Mm.
continuing to do the coaching, which is something that I admire and I kind of just love doing on the side as well.
Yeah.
Between all of those other things that I do enjoy, and then one of the companies being land flipping, being a majority of that cut, I think it just fits in everything. You know what I mean?
100%. Well, let's
Mhm.
talk numbers then. So far, what have you been able to do with land? Like, tell me some of the deals you've done or deals you're currently working on. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's been going really well. It's definitely escalated and snowballed way quicker than I expected, but
Yeah.
it wasn't too much of a surprise because, I mean, just like too, like when I kind of started with you, it was one of those things where you told me from the beginning, like, hey, I'll go as quick as you want with this thing.
Yeah.
And, from last time you had an experience with me where it's like, dude, I like to move quick. Like success loves speed.
Yep.
But yeah, going to like numbers, I mean, I'm working on 11 deals right now, or
Nice.
10 rather.
Okay.
And one of them we just closed off, which was about 3 weeks ago. That was my
Okay.
first deal that we finally flipped.
Nice.
That was a pretty good deal. We made about 7,900.
Okay.
Thought we were gonna make a little bit more, but things came out on the end a little bit rough. But
Yeah.
it all worked out, so it was good. And that was quick. It was like a 25-day turnaround. It was a normal double close.
Nice.
Um, had a little bit troubles with the sellers, but we kind of worked everything out. Things
Okay.
went smooth, but I think it would have got done a lot sooner if we didn't kind of run into a little bit of an issues.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so now I'm kind of just working on the other 10 deals. Um, three of them are on the market right now, and then the rest
Okay.
we're kind of just waiting to close and then get
Mm.
listed on the market.
Okay.
We're closing on one Tuesday. That
Okay.
should be a good deal. About $7,600. That one as well.
Okay.
So good double close opportunity there. And that turnaround was about, I want to say a month, about.
Dang.
So
Okay.
30 days. Yeah, 32, 33 days, something around there. So yeah, between that, I mean, I've already made back and double my investment into the business. So I've
Yeah.
kind of been hammering, doubling back down. Like I said, kind of shifting into a different part of the business of like scaling it.
Yes.
I wanted to hire a virtual assistant to kind of help me just double down and kind of just take it to the next level. So that's been another big driven goal of mine in any business sector that I get into. Like, how can I build this thing up as quick as possible?
Yep.
Not just worrying about the ROI, but how can I really just build it, you know?
Okay.
So yeah. I
Okay.
mean,
And
go ahead.
I'm curious. So like the deals that you have on the market currently, like run me through those numbers. Like what are they under contract at? What do you expect to make on those? Like what do those look like?
Yeah, so a few of them, I want to say, so this one we're looking at in Florida, we just closed on about 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
That was a buy for 20, buy for 21 and a half,
Okay.
and we're looking at around selling it for 50,000. So a pretty good deal there.
Yeah.
More than double. So that's really good. So that one's been doing well. The one we're working on in South Carolina, that was a buy for 24.4, and we're selling that for 50,000. Get ready
Okay.
to close on that.
That's good.
I think the 18th of this month. So
Okay.
that's awesome. Also another great deal, basically double.
You have a
Um,
contract on that to sell it already?
what was that?
Like so you already bought that, you have a contract to sell it?
Yes.
Oh,
Mhm.
nice.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So we're selling. That's going to be closing on the 18th. We're just waiting on the buyers. They want to do a perk test.
Okay, yeah.
But I think we're closing on that date no matter what. So they feel good moving forward.
Nice.
There's a property right next to it, so it should have no problem perking.
Okay.
And then we just locked up another deal in, where's that? I think Duplin County, North Carolina.
Nice.
So
Don't tell everyone your secrets, bro.
so yeah, no, that's been going well. That's a buy for 32,000.
Okay.
Is it 32,000? I'm trying to think. It's so hard to keep. That's why I have my
Yeah,
spreadsheet.
you have a lot of deals.
But yeah, that should be good. I think just a double close opportunity.
Okay.
And that's going to go well as well.
And you have a lot of things going on. So you've already sold some properties. You have some that are under contract to sell with got a great margin from what you just described. You have some that you're under contract to purchase. So between all these 10, like when everything shakes out, when it's all said and done, what do you think you're going to make from all these 10?
So I think one of the deals were kind of one or two of the deals has a chance of falling through just because we ran into a little bit of a difficulty with easement, and then
Sure.
possibly another one that the title's all messed up on. So we're kind of working with the seller and then the title company to see what the best route is.
Mhm.
So I haven't really been counting those, but between the other 9, we're definitely looking at well over 100,000. So probably around the 110, I'm thinking.
That's crazy. Okay, and how many pieces of mail did you send to get all those deals?
So 10, I was just looking at this last night. It's so funny you said that. I was looking at it last night, and not including the one we just got locked up under contract last week, I sent around 10,500 mail for about 10 deals.
So what about 1,000 pieces of mail per deal?
Yeah, about. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really good, right?
Yeah, phenomenal. Because I was looking back at like kind of the numbers of where you should be around on average, and I was like, yeah, I'm definitely doing way better than what I'm expected to get.
Yeah.
But it's like one of those things where I know it's just going to average out, and you kind of just ride the wave until it kind of settles back,
Yeah, I mean that's really good. I always tell people like you should get a deal between 2,500 to 5,000 letters, and the difference comes down to obviously targeting the right properties, the right sellers, and then also how you are, following up with people, doing those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be honest. I mean, just based on what I know about you, I think you could definitely be on that lower end of the spectrum. Like you've already sent 10,000 out, you've gotten 10 deals. Like that's a really good metric. Why do you think you're doing so well? Like what is it about you or maybe your process that is helping you beat those KPIs?
Yeah, and it's a good question because rolling into something like this, like my sales is my sales skill is still developing, and it was something that I kind of was a little bit uneducated on. But like I'm really good at kind of just building rapport with people. Like I think I like to say I have a good personality. Like I just I get along with most people. So once I kind of realized that when you're over the phone with these sellers is kind of just building that rapport, being cool, and acting like a friend that you're just trying to help them out. Once I found out that was the big like thing to dig into, and I realized my strength, I kind of just leveraged it, right? Just be yourself, be cool. and build that rapport over the phone. And that's definitely helped me out, I think, in the long run for sure.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way that you describe that because I think this is where a lot of people struggle. I mean, I've sold a lot of things. I think land is probably one of the easiest sales things, but there is some element of sales, right? Because
Right.
obviously you're talking to people.
Hmm.
But the way that you describe it is the way that people need to think about it is that you're helping them. And you are, like you're literally giving them money,
Right.
right? And so
Yeah.
when you come from that frame of like I'm here to serve and help someone and solve their problem, whatever it is, maybe they want to buy a boat or maybe they need the money to pay for some hip surgery. I don't know, something's
Hmm.
going on, and you just focus on like connecting with another human being. That's where you do well. The area where people struggle with sales or anything like sales related is they treat it like it's this really different thing. Like it's like okay, now
Hmm.
I'm on a sales call. It's like dude, it's like it's not different. It's like the same as going out to dinner with a friend. It's just that you're having a conversation that's about a very specific topic. So if more
Right.
people could do what you're doing, I mean, they would crush. And that's part of the reason your numbers are so good,
Hmm.
100%.
Hmm.
For you, like, I think you said your skills are still developing,
Hmm.
right? What do you think are some areas that you need to work on that are going to help you get to the next level? Because you're already doing well.
Hmm. Hmm. It's a good question. Um, Mainly, I think just speaking to more different types of sellers.
Okay.
I've happened to run into like, and I think of course it's a little bit of luck, but running into a lot of the sellers that were very easygoing, and they
Yeah.
weren't like these hardcore aggressive sellers. Like I ran into a couple of them on what I've done recently with the
I
mailers
remember.
that I've
Yeah.
sent out, but um, I think a lot of the people that I have spoke to were good people. You know what I mean? Like they weren't. It wasn't hard to like
Yeah.
ask them questions. It wasn't hard to dig into and probe into the issues that they were currently having. So I think the main thing that right now that I want to kind of get better at is maybe dealing with more of those aggressive sellers and kind of playing more
Mm.
hardball. Because at times I could be too nice, where it's like,
Yeah.
they'll push back on me, and it's like, oh, like let me, instead of pushing back on them, let me kind of like settle back down and kind of play at their level, but take a step down from their level rather than like playing
Yeah.
at their level. I should say. So I think running into more sellers like that
Mm.
would help me sharpen up those skills for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Not a lot of people think about this, but there are different types of sellers, and I break it down to three. So you've got the type that are just super friendly, talkative, like really easy to talk to, right?
Hmm.
You've got the other end of the spectrum where they're kind of a little rough around the edges, you might say,
Right.
okay? And then you have someone in the middle who's just like normal. And there's a pretty evenly distributed mix of that you're going to experience. What I've found as the secret, quote unquote, to like work with those people who are a bit tough is it's kind of what you said. You have to match them, but you have to be really tactful, right? Because if you get someone who's like, very like gruff, you don't want it to become like a pissing contest where like you're yelling at each other, but they have to respect you, and so you need to meet them at their level
Hmm.
so that they know that like they can't walk all over you and take advantage of you. And to be honest, dude, like a lot of this stuff, it comes from the frame, the way that you open the call. Like if
Right.
you're way too friendly with them, they're gonna eat you alive. So you have to be a leader. It's what I call leadership-based rapport.
Hmm.
So it's where they respect you. They don't need to like you, bro. That's the secret that people don't think about is like they think in sales they need to like me. No, they don't. They need to
Hmm.
respect you. Think about when you go to a doctor's office. Do you need to like your doctor?
No.
But you do need to respect them and trust them, right?
Percent. Yeah.
Yeah. And if a doctor is like, yo, pull down your pants, you're probably gonna do it.
Yeah.
You know why?
Why?
Because you respect them and you trust
Yeah.
them. You
Yes.
you know that they're gonna do something that is like they're doing it for a reason. They're there to help you out. And that's the type of frame you have to develop, especially those people who are a little more aggressive. And
Hmm.
I'll be honest, and I said this on one of the calls last night. I don't know if you were there for it, but I was reviewing someone else's call, and I gave an example of how I would negotiate. And I'll literally say things like, "Listen, man, like I don't want to waste your time nor my time. Like I'm pretty like blunt because for those people, that's what you have to do. And I think you already recognize that. So as long as you just start to step into that more, you'll be fine. And the way to do it is again by remembering you're doing them a service, you're helping them, you're giving them money. So it's like, yo, like, do you want my help or not? Do you want money? If you don't, like, let's move
Right.
on.
I think it's too a lot just connecting it to just like overall life. Like it's kind of with anything else, you
Yes.
know. If you kind of just let people walk all over you in general, like not really gonna get far, you know.
Yeah.
So if you kind of can just connect it to that, and that's just where I've been kind of trying to put the pieces together and sharpen
Mm.
up those sales skills of just relating it to a general life. Like you can't just be out there and just let people walk all over you or stoop down to people's levels of just Like you kind of just have to do your thing and be you and just come out, obviously being truthful and trustful.
Yes.
And I think that will go way, like you said, go way further than just letting people walk all over you and going along those lines.
Yeah. So for you, I know that you're working on scaling right now. What does scaling a land flipping business look like? Like, what are the actual steps that you're taking? I mean, you've already done great. You've got $100,000 in the pipeline. So
Mhm.
what are you doing to grow and push it forward?
Yeah. So the last 4 weeks have been pretty hectic, but what it looked like is I probably interviewed about 50 to 55 different candidates for my
That's
virtual
awesome.
assistant position. That was like a good 3 week, like almost 3 week process.
Mm,
And that went really well. I finally kind of ran into someone that I think personally, not only did it fit me well or the company, but it also just fit her
yes.
goals and her aspirations perfectly as well. So that's was something that was a big goal of mine the past month. So that's kind of been smashed, right? We got her kind of just dialed in, working on scrubbing lists and getting as ton as mail out as we can
Okay.
before the end of Q4. So between that and then kind of just running through some markets that we've already had success in,
Yeah.
hitting those markets again,
Hmm.
venturing off into a couple new markets to gather some more data back and use for the following year. So yeah, we're gearing up to send like close to 20,000 mail out before the end of next week. I'm hoping
Nice.
everything will be sent out and on their way to the front doors of these people. So between hiring the VA and just getting mass mail out, I think was my main goal before kind of
Mm,
running into at least mid-November. You
okay.
know, to kind of just get maybe at least five more deals in the pipeline rolling into 2025.
Yeah.
So I think just that, and then I got a lot of things going on the end of the year, moving out. I'm going to a
Yep.
different state, like I told you, coming down to Florida, and just between all that stuff, I wanted to go hard at this stuff because I know it's just going to pick up probably
Yeah.
in December, in January, as far as like on the calls,
Yep.
but it's like one of those things of just having growing pains. Like
Hmm.
having growing pains, and then like 6 months from today or a year from today, like it just pays off.
Yeah.
So
That's really interesting. You said a few things that I want to touch on. The first thing is, why did you, well, I guess you should ask this. Why did you decide to hire a VA? And then how did you know that now was the right time versus waiting or doing it earlier?
so first off, I think I had a little bit of an experience of like with the virtual assistants from my other business,
Okay.
and there was just no way that I could have scaled that business without a virtual assistant to where it is today.
Yeah.
Just as far as like the miscellaneous tasks that have to be handled on the back end of the business.
Hmm.
And when I realized that, like, because before I had a VA for that business, like I thought I was doing really well, but I was working a lot more
Yes.
and I was doing things that I didn't want to do, right? Whether it was
Yep.
just talking to, it's a hospitality service. So like
Yeah.
comforting people like way more than you want. So
Sure.
I thought I was doing well before I had a position for that in that company. And then I incorporated a virtual assistant, and I was like, wow, like that just took a whole lump sum of stress off
Yeah.
my chest. And I knew going into this business that it was going to be very similar to where there was going to be a bunch of miscellaneous tasks that I don't want to do. Because, like, dude, not so much that I'm not a numbers guy, but I'm not someone that wants to do like stuff that's just going to waste my time and not give me a
Like
lot,
what?
like as far as scrubbing lists.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't want to sit there for an hour to scrub lists when I know there's a bunch of more other stuff that I could put my time into
Mm.
to get more back when I can just
Yes.
hire that out. So knowing that from my previous business and rolling into this, I knew as soon as possible I wanted to get someone in that position
Okay.
to put my time into other areas of the business that I know will excel much quicker.
Yeah, that's a really important point that I think a lot of people mess up is they, especially like obviously you have experience with your previous business, but for people who are new, they struggle with like, okay, who's the first person that I should hire?
Mm,
And in this business, I believe it's exactly who you hired. It's someone who's going to take off the non-revenue generating tasks because
good point.
scrubbing a list, right, or doing due diligence on a property, like seeing if it has, electric, that time that you spend there, that literally does not make you money. What
Right.
makes you money is talking to sellers and getting deals. So
Hmm.
that's the highest revenue producing task that you could do, right? Dan Martell, I don't know if you know him, but he has a great book on this, Buy Back Your Time. It talks about like, what
Hmm.
do you outsource first? And this kind of follows that framework because when you outsource that, and let's say you get an extra, handful of hours a week back in your time, that's time that if you use it correctly, you
Hmm.
can put onto talking to more sellers, which equals more deals. And with the VA that you have, I mean, how much are you paying them an hour?
$5.
It's freaking $5. You know what I mean? So it's like $5 to like get your time back. It's like, hey, you should probably do it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, I think too a good point is too like what I've realized, and I know I mentioned like from my previous businesses, I kind of learned from that. Also,
Yeah.
too, like my mom's a business owner, like she does extremely well as far as
Okay.
just for our family. So it's not so much like a like anything of what I do or yourself, but she owns like a in-person service business, and
Okay.
I kind of just see too that like she doesn't, and she does an awesome job. Don't get me wrong, but I can kind
Yeah.
of just see on from looking on the outside of like
Mm.
it's very hard to build the business and kind of pull yourself out of it if you're not outsourcing specific things.
Yeah.
And until you do that, like you're always going to be working in the business, right? And I think, definitely giving credits to you. Like I learned this a long time ago, and a couple other of my mentors of just knowing when it comes to a point of pulling yourself out of the business and working on it, then
Yep.
continually just working in it. Because then at that same point, like, are you really yeah, you may be the boss, but like, are you really a business owner? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think seeing that too, and like I do my best to help her out, but just having those certain things in my life, I was
Hmm.
able to kind of carry over into what I want it to look like, and just that's one of those things. Like I want to work on my business. I don't want to just constantly be working on the inside.
Yep.
I rather just be like that CEO type framework of overseeing everything, and
Yes.
just like you said, working on the high income skill or the high income stuff that's going to give me a bigger ROI or return.
Yeah, you said something powerful, and like the fundamental difference you're talking about is basically going from an employee mindset to an employer. And the difference is having a business that you run versus a business that runs you. And where a lot of people get caught up in is because they try and do everything themselves. And not like, with a land business in the beginning, like it takes a few hours a week. It doesn't take that much time. But when you scale like you do right now, like when you're doing 20,000 mailers a month, like you
Hmm.
didn't start there. You started like 5,000 a month. Like that didn't take that much time, did it?
No,
Yeah.
no.
So when you get like you 4x your business essentially, obviously it takes more time. And so you have to do what you're doing, which is take yourself out of the nitty gritty so you can focus on actually scaling. My
Mhm.
question for you is, I guess like how would you know when the right time is to bring that person in? Because like you could definitely do it way too early and you could do it too late.
I think it's not even like the feeling of being ready.
Okay.
It's just like knowing like all right, like I see this business going, and like if you could
Yep.
kind of plan ahead and see like okay,
Hmm.
if I've already scaled this quick and we've gotten these numbers now, like
Yep.
when at the position, and the reason why I say it's like don't do it not when you're just ready is like because I
Yep.
was ready, like I was so slammed still, but I knew if I can just get in back in the trenches and just get back to work now and just kind of grind it out
Hmm.
that I knew would pay off in the long term. So if you kind of, I guess, just the best way to answer your question, I think if you can kind of just look ahead and see where the business is going and you
Yep.
see the trajectory of it going up, I think that is when you should realize, okay, I need to bring someone in.
That's a good point. What I always tell people is like a very like quantitative benchmark is like once you plan to start doing about 10,000 mailers a month or more, that's when you need to look on bringing a VA because scrubbing the data will actually take a good amount of your time, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
at 20,000 mailers, like that's almost, full-time hours of like
Mm-hmm.
scrubbing data and then on the back end, hand the DD. But when you're first starting and doing like 5,000 mailers a month, it's like you can get away with working a few hours a week. It's not that much you have to do,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I guess for you, something else I want to touch on this, a bit higher level, but I think some people might enjoy this. You said you interviewed about 50 people to find one.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you interview 50 people?
Mm-hmm. So it's so funny because like when you interview these people, like a lot of them like to talk and like they all seem like a really good
Yeah.
fit for the business, but then when you really start to like probe into them and like you kind of see how they speak, you kind of see how like they go about their own life,
Hmm.
you get a really good understanding of like okay, what goals do they have and aspirations that line up with not only just mine but the companies, like my companies.
Mm.
So when I started interviewing, like my first interview for my other business, when I did a group interview, it was like for about 10 VAs at once, and I was like, I knew, like I found one in that interview, and I was like, oh, she's the one,
Yeah.
right? And then I already had the next interview planned, and then there was another like 8 in there, and I was like, oh, this guy's the one. And I was like, hold on a second, like I feel like I'm always gonna
Uh,
find one out of the group that I'm currently looking at.
okay.
But what if I just expand that and just meet 50 in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and then find one from each interview, and then go deeper into it
Yeah.
and put them in one pool?
That's smart.
So
Yeah.
I think that was like the big turning point of realizing like there is a lot of good skills out there. There's a lot of good talent, I should say.
Hmm.
But what was like the really differentiating factor that like who's going to line up best with the company and their self? Because I'm a true
Yep.
believer that like you got to like what you do. You
Yep.
got to at least have some sort of motivation in your work and your ethic to
Hmm.
continue doing it, right? And to have it be a long-term goal or a long-term plan.
Okay.
So that was something that I knew going into this that I want all those checks to check off.
Yeah.
Um, after interviewing 50, I ran into it, but sometimes it takes meeting a bunch of people to really see, like, open up that pool to see where it would take you, you know?
That's awesome. Yeah. And again, this is a mistake a lot of people make when they're hiring their first, position. A VA, like that's probably, to be honest, like it's one of the easiest positions to hire for, right?
Mhm.
Because it's not like, they're gonna make or break the business. It's not like they're a salesperson. They're gonna, be in control of all the revenue that's coming in. They're an important position, but it's a really good like first position for people who are new to practice hiring on. And what you did is so important because what most people do is they maybe interview a few people and then they're like, oh, I got my person. But just like you experienced where like you could run one interview and then another one, be like, oh, I like this one, this one. You have to give yourself enough of a sample size to see the differences and to not choose too quickly, right?
Mhm.
Because that's where it can bite you in the butt. I promise, and like this is for you and for everyone else, I have never regretted waiting to make a hire. I've always regretted when I rush to hire,
Mhm.
right? And when you're new to hiring people, sometimes you don't have the reference experience to know what you're actually looking for and what good looks like because you just haven't talked to enough people. But
Right.
the way that you can solve that is if you talk to 50 people, you don't need to be, the best person hiring. Like you literally have enough sample that you would be like, okay, like this one's the best. I've interviewed 50. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. No, that's a really good point too. I mean, you're like obviously there's always better. So like I think like
Yeah.
you said it perfect. Like having that big sample size,
Mm.
you have just a way better chance of finding a better fit for your company. And I
Okay.
think too like hiring is definitely probably the hardest skill I think to be as like a
Yep.
business owner.
For
And I've
sure.
realized that like a while ago of like just managing my other employees and things of that sort. I think that's the hardest part, and something that is skill that develops like just as you go and the more you
Hmm.
kind of do it. And I think it's definitely super important to kind of just do what you do. Obviously, the best way you can do, like of what you know when you're
Yes.
hiring, and you're just going to learn as you go. But like, you really got to be strategic with it because
Yeah.
um, you hear so many people that hire and then just fire a bunch of times. Like,
Yep.
how much time are you really putting into your business and having it grow rather than like going back and putting band-aids on your previous stuff that you've already done. It's a lot. It takes a lot of time of retraining and
Yep.
all that stuff. Like, I think it's super important.
100%. And something that you mentioned that's really important is that people that make a hiring decision too quickly, especially if they're new, they spend so much more time having to hire, fire, retrain, do all that, than if they would have just waited a little bit longer, interviewed more people in the beginning. Like 2 weeks is not that much time, like to
Hmm.
run a group interview. You can do freaking 15 people in one group interview. You bang out 3, 4 of those, like you're done.
Right.
You save so much more time just waiting to find the right person rather than getting somebody who's like, and putting them in. So for you though, like you're scaling now, you've got the VA, you're gonna go to 20,000 mailers a month. I guess like what's next? Like what else do you think you're gonna need to do to scale this business? And do you have I know you said you wanted to get to like 100K with like everything going on. I mean,
Hmm.
do you have a specific number that you want to get this to every single month?
Yeah, I definitely want to get to 40,000 a month
Okay.
just from land. I
Yeah.
think that's a good benchmark. Um, and I think eventually transitioning my normal VA into a higher role,
Okay.
as long as everything goes well. I mean, she's only been with me for a couple weeks. Everything's been going great, but I think that too, like maybe going back a little bit from hiring is like giving that incentive of like there's going to be more roles and more opportunities for you to
Yeah,
grow.
100%.
But yeah, I think definitely maybe something along the lines of like an acquisition manager,
Hmm.
to kind of help me in that side of things. But honestly, too, like in this business, you don't really have to hire too much.
Yeah.
There's not thousands of moving parts where you have to have like, for example, for Airbnb, like cleaners, handyman, like all
Mm.
property manager, all these different roles. Um, I think maybe just hiring another VA to take over scrubbing, and then maybe my VA currently just boosting her up in the company and have her take more opportunities and roles.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good point that you mentioned. You want to paint a vision for the people that you're hiring. Like even though a VA like it's kind of like a lower level position, to find good talent, like good talent wants to grow. They want to get to the next level, and so you want to paint a vision for like, hey, like you're not just going to be a butt in a seat, but eventually you could transition into this because they have something to work towards. And as long as you align it with like what their own personal goals are, they can crush.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're right in the sense of on this business, dude, you can do a lot of damage with just you yourself and a VA, you yourself and an acquisition manager. If you get the acquisition manager, like at 20,000 letters a month, you're definitely going to start being on the phones more. When you remove yourself from the phones and you're at that scale, like one, you're gonna make a ton of money, right? And you're gonna be spending like no time on it because you have someone who's doing that. So I guess for you, when do you think that you're gonna start interviewing and thinking about bringing on an acquisition manager? Have you gotten that far yet?
I have a little bit. I've only thought about it just myself, but like I think more so I want to run into more scenarios in the sales side to kind of just learn more, so I can kind of feed my employees that skill, like from my understanding. So I think not yet as far as like me looking for that role to hire, but eventually I know it'll come. I think just it's a waiting game at this point. Like get more exposure to the space, learn more about it, run into maybe some more obstacles. So when that time does come, I have more experience to teach my people and like to let them know, hey, if this happens, this is what you do, right?
Yes.
Right now, like even though I've been doing it for such a short amount of time, like 3 months is it's not short, but it's not long at all. So like there's just way more to learn about, and I think if I can stay in that mindset, I know the time will tell itself when it's like, okay, bring in an acquisition manager, you've ran into a bunch of obstacles, you've overcome them. That's when it's a good time, I think, and I haven't thought about it too much, but that's what I have thought about so far.
Well, let's go a little bit deeper on that because I've done it. I can help you with that. There's a few things to think about. The way that you're thinking about it is correct. Like you want to be able to transfer a skill to your employee, and there's a few mistakes that I'll tell you so you can avoid them. What a lot of people do is and again, like if you're only doing like 5,000 letters a month, it's like you're gonna spend 5 to 10 hours a week in the business. Like it's nothing, right? Once you start to get to 10,000 letters a month, it's gonna get a little bit busier. But at 20,000, like you're definitely spending a lot more time on the phone. Like it's gonna become like a much more active thing. So at that point and above this, like you do need to start thinking eventually about getting someone, unless you want to stay on the phones, that you can. But the mistake that people make is they're like, I want to stop, being on the phones. I don't like sales, and so they just go hire someone and they suck at it, and it never works. Because how can you expect to hire someone who's good and then manage them and train them if you yourself aren't good at it?
Right.
It doesn't make sense. It like unless you're going to pay a crap ton of money to find an expert, you're screwed. And additionally, if you do find someone who's like top level salesperson, they're going to juice you for everything you have because they know that you can't do it and live without them. Like that's not a position you want to be in. It'll excuse my language, it'll F you in terms of running a sales team. Right. One of the things that I got from one of the leaders, mentors that I worked with is, as aggressive as it sounds, like if you're going to eventually run a sales team that's going to be high performing, which that's where you're getting to. And for some people listening, dude, like that's not what they want. They just want to do a few deals a month, send out 5,000 letters a month. That's cool. You can do a very low maintenance business, but I know based on our conversations, like you want to scale, like you want to make a real business, right? Okay, cool. So if you're going to run a sales team, like number one, you need to be the best. And number two, like you need to be willing to completely tear that sales team to the ground and rebuild it if needed. And like your salespeople need to know, like, yo, like this guy, my manager, the owner, like he's the best. He crushes. Because if you're ever in a position where that salesperson is like, oh man, like I'm better than the owner, like again, like they're gonna juice you for everything, and you're not gonna be able to hold them accountable if quite literally you're not better than them. Right. They need to respect you a lot. Doesn't mean to be a dick, but they need to respect you. And so the other mistake that people make is, and this really freaking irks me, and I tried it, and I knew I shouldn't have done it, and I did it, and it was a mistake. Is hiring overseas acquisition managers. Here's the thing. People get away with it in the land space because I'll be honest, like this is so much easier to sell compared to like wholesaling houses. Like it's just way easier, right? But here's the problem. If you hire someone from overseas, and it's no knock on like overseas people, they're great for certain positions, like more operational, like VA stuff. But if you hire someone overseas to do sales, if their monthly income that they need to hit in their country is like, hey, if they hit 500, 800, even 1,000 a month, like they're living really well. And then you want them to work on deals that are worth freaking 10, 20, 30, $50,000. Do you really think they're going to be that motivated to be a top tier salesperson?
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not. Well, I know, like they're not, because if they do one deal a month, they're like, oh my God, I made everything I need. So like good salespeople need to have that drive of something they can reach towards, right? Additionally, I will say this is that the language barrier, it's a big thing. Even if you find someone that has like good English from overseas, The problem is in the land business, we're talking to people in like rural areas. They're like pretty conservative, and
Yeah.
they're gonna be kind of like weirded out. Like, why am I talking to someone who sounds like they're overseas in some call center? It's like
Right.
that's not what you want. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Right. Years away. Yeah.
So the way that you do it, and what I've had massive success in, is hiring U.S. based acquisition managers.
Mm.
And honestly, like you post on Indeed, you can find some great people because it's an opportunity where, as long as you're sending enough mail, like which you are, you can have a six-figure opportunity for them as a salesperson to earn.
Yeah.
And you can get people who have come from wholesaling operations where they're wholesaling houses, and a lot of those guys are killers because that's way harder, right?
Yeah, so like their skill set can transfer over for sure.
Yeah, because it's so much more complicated to do like a wholesale deal versus a land deal, and so that transfers over. The thing that you just have to be cognizant of is that when you do hire a salesperson, it needs to be like a volume knob, not a light switch in terms of ramping them up. So what I mean by that is like right now, sales is, I mean, it always is. It's the most important part of your business because if no one's closing deals, then you're not going to make money. Like
Mm-hmm.
the only reason you built $100,000 pipeline in 3 months, which is amazing, is because like you talk to people,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
What a lot of people do when they hire someone is they're like, oh, finally, I got off my plate. They just like, all right, you're in it, go, figure it out, do it,
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
like totally give it up.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to slowly ramp them up, and what that process should look like, and I could talk about this later again off the podcast, is the first week they're learning about the company, learning about exactly what you do. You're training them one-on-one every single day. Second week, you give them the half amount of leads that they would normally get.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what you're looking for is that they're ramping up, they're taking your feedback, they're implementing it, they're doing well. Especially with mail leads, like they're really good. Like in their first 10 leads, they should be able to get, as long as they're quality leads, they should be able to get a deal signed.
Right.
And then as long as they're trending upwards, week 3, week 4, you give them a full amount of volume and you let them roll.
Mm.
Okay. I'm going to tell you this because it's super important. No one knows this unless you've done it like multiple times. That first month, they're going to crush it because they've been training with you like every single day. That second month, it's always worse because they're really excited. They come in hot and heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like this natural dip that happens. So like if that ever happens, just know it's totally normal.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to stay on them and just keep training them and they'll come out of it. But you do want to expect, I'm going to hire a salesperson and they're probably going to perform at 70, maybe 80% if you're lucky of how good you are. So the better you can get, the better person you can bring in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. No, that makes total sense. I think you make really good points, and that's like another good props to you I'll give is like you're very good at the operational side and systems of like what that looks like. And I think that's where I kind of come to you a lot and ask you, how should I go about this? Like you're very good at developing that system and operations of what that training or hiring system looks like to get the outcome you need in the long run with your employees. So I think you make a lot of good points there. And like, that's a skill that takes a long time to build. It takes experience, and it not only just experience, but it takes, good people in your corner to help you out in scenarios like that. So, props to you. That's really good stuff.
Well, dude, listen, I know you're gonna crush it. I'm excited to see where you're at in the next few months, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate it having me on. I look forward to the next one for sure.